Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Forms and Self-Marking Quizzes session for the EduMeet today. So my name is Kylie Kingdon. I'm the Head of Humanities and Social Sciences at Emmanuel Catholic College in Western Australia. That's the reason why I said good morning, because it's only 11 o'clock over here. I've got my Twitter handle there. Please feel free to take screenshots and tweet throughout the session. Don't forget to include the tag for Microsoft Education Australia in there as well. I've got my email address as well if you'd like to make contact and ask questions about anything that you've seen today. I will do an acknowledgement of country. So, Kaya Wanju, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodian of the Noongar Wadjuk people of the lands that I am speaking to you from today. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you are learning, living and working from today. As we share our knowledge, may we also pay respects to our elders, both past and present, as it is their knowledge and experiences that hold the key to the success of future generations. So what are we going to be doing in this session? Basically, I'm going to show you some examples of how you can use forms and quizzes for different assessments with students, both in a remote learning situation and in a face-to-face learning situation. I know a couple of the other sessions have touched on forms today, and really this session is focusing quite specifically on how you can use forms for assessment. So let's start with the most basic question. How do you access Microsoft Forms? So it's available as part of your Office 365 suite on the homepage. If you haven't used it before, you might have to use the All Apps or the search button to find it. You sign in with your Office 365 email account, and the first time you open it, it'll give you a little tutorial to walk you through the basics, which is really, really handy. I am going to just sort out some terminology when we're dealing with forms. So Microsoft Forms is the name of the application, and within that you have two different types of tools. You have forms, which are used for surveys and collecting of data. And what we're going to be focusing on today is looking at quizzes. So these have self-marking capabilities, and I know that anything that can reduce your marking load is welcomed by teachers. So what we're going to start with, I'm actually going to go through and show you how to set up a form and look at the different aspects of the different questions you can ask and how you can actually set up a simple form for assessment. So I'm going to switch to desktop. Okay, so this is the forms, Microsoft Forms. You can see here I've got a range of different forms that I have used. Again, you've got your new form and your new quiz. So we're going to set up a new quiz. First thing we're going to do is we're going to give that, it's going to ask me to sign in. And let's try that again. All right, so we're going to start off with a new quiz. So I'm just going to create something very simple. So there's my title. You can enter in a description, this is where you could put learning goals and success criteria for the students, or you can just have a description for yourself as to what this form is all about. Pressure's on to type properly and not spell incorrectly. Okay, so you can actually add an image in there as well if you want some sort of visual tool to visual cue for the students. But now we're going to get to the questions. So it's as simple as clicking on Add New, and you come up with a choice of questions. So you've got choice questions, literally multiple choice questions. You've got text questions. These will give you either the short or the long response, which I'll go through and show you in a moment. You've got rating questions, really good for feedback or reflection. You can ask questions that make the people taking the quiz answer with a date. Just be aware, though, it is set to US format. So some of my Year 7s were a little bit confused because they couldn't put in the correct date because it was in the US format. If you click on the down button, you've got some more questions there. So ranking questions. I use this as a history teacher and give them a whole heap of events and ask them to put it in chronological order. Likart is really good for reflection and gathering data. You can ask students to upload a file as part of their answer, or the Net Promoter Score, again, is for gathering data and reflection feedback. So let's add in a multiple choice question. Right, so we've got a question there. Which Microsoft tool would you use to create a report? We can then put in options for their multiple choice. So let's go with Excel. Now, sometimes when you put in answers, it'll actually give you suggestions of other answers. Right, so we're going to put in PowerPoint, we're going to put in OneDrive, and we're going to put in Word. Now, Word is the correct answer, so we're going to tick it. And this will enable the self-marking to happen, which I'll show you shortly. The other function that we can have with multiple choice questions is we can actually provide comments. So if a student selects, say, PowerPoint as the correct answer, we can put in a message here to explain why it isn't the correct answer. This can be great if you have, if you want to explain to the students why it isn't the correct answer, or highlight how they've misread or how they've misread the question. You might be able to put some responses in there. You can also put in a response for the correct answer, just to give them a little bit of encouragement. Now, points, when you're doing a quiz, you are able to allocate points to each question. So this is a multiple choice question. Therefore, I'm only going to allocate it 1 point. I also tick the required. This will make sure that students answer every single question before they submit their form. So it prevents students from skipping over questions. All right, so if we go add new, I'm going to add another choice. Another question, but this time I'm going to allow for multiple answers. Okay, so I'm going to say that these 3 are correct because I've been teaching my Year 7 so they can put video. And we're going to say, no, Excel isn't correct. Now, for this one, I'm actually going to give it 3 marks. If they get 2 out of 3, when it goes to self-marking, as I'll show you in a moment, it will actually mark it as 0 out of 3. So there is some reviewing that we need to do with the self-marking. But for this case, I'm going to set it as a 3-mark question. All right, I'm going to add a text question now. So as I said before, there are 2 types of text questions, short answers and long answers. So I'm going to start with a short answer. Okay, so name the best tool for recording and sharing video. I'm going to add an answer and I'm going to put in Flipgrid. Now again, when the marking happens, the self-marking will look for the exact spelling and the exact format. So you have to review these just to make sure that kids haven't spelt things wrong, because they will be marked as 0. And I'm going to make this worth 1 point. Okay. Let's add a long answer. Okay, so this one I want them to explain a process, so it's going to be a lot longer. So I can click here with the long answer and it gives them more space. But notice it doesn't give you an opportunity to put a correct answer. When you've got long answers, you will have to go and mark those answers when we get to the review stage. And I'm going to give this one 4 marks. Okay. So this is a very basic form. You can see that it's been adding up the marks as we go. So this quiz is currently out of 9 points and I have 4 questions. From here, we're going to make it pretty. So we're going to go up to the themes button and you actually get some suggested themes that you can use. You have some colours that you can use. And then you have some graphics that you have been provided with as well. One of the biggest criticisms or complaints that people have about forms is that you can't categorize them in folders or in sections or spaces. So I actually use the themes as a way to categorize them. So all of my Year 7 ICT forms have this particular theme to them. So it's a quick visual that I can go, oh, that's Year 7 ICT, for example. All right, so we can actually preview the form now, and this is how it will look like when the kids go access the link. So we can see the questions all there, and we can see the submit button. We've got immersive reader here, so the students can click on that and have the questions read to them in the same way that immersive reader is used throughout the Microsoft suite. You can also check what it's going to look like on a mobile device, which is really handy. Okay, we're now going to look at the settings. Now we've made it look pretty, we're going to look at the settings. And this particular step has been an interesting one during remote learning. I had a lot of teachers using forms during remote learning and they'd come up to me and they'd say, how do I work out which response it belongs to which student? Or things like my students actually one time said to me, I only got 4 out of 25 for a quiz that you set me. And that was because I had the show results automatically and most of the questions were actually questions that I had to go back and review. So I turn this one off because I want students to be able to see their results after I have gone through and had a look at their forms, especially when there's long answers. If you have this particular button switched on, students will get their results straight away. So if you've got a simple multiple choice type question, you can tick that, no problems at all. If you've got anything else that requires you to go back and have a look at it, I would suggest turning that off. When we're talking about quizzes, you really want to make sure only people in your organisation can respond and that you record their name and that they have 1 response per person. So kids will access this through their school email. It will record their name for you and you can have 1 response per person. If you are doing some data collection of parents, for example, you'll need to click anyone with this link can respond and have, say, your first question, please record your name. So options for responses. You can have a start and an end date and time. So a lot of teachers saw this and went, brilliant, timed assessments, how I would run it in my classroom normally. They can have a class starts at 12 o'clock and it finishes at 12:45. So I'll allow them to access the form during those times. In theory, that works. We did have a few issues during remote learning with students being unable to submit their forms on the deadline because there were so many students trying to do that. I found it has worked best if you have, say, the form available for a day and students have to get that information in at some point during that day. You can shuffle your questions. So you can shuffle all questions or you can lock specific questions. So locking specific questions becomes important when you are looking at branching, for example. So I'm going to switch over to another form to show you some branching. And if there are any maths teachers on at the moment, I do apologise. This is an example of a maths quiz. I've seen quite a few examples from primary school teachers on how they've used forms and branching to help identify where kids are at with a particular skill. So this is a maths quiz that I have here, and I have locked it. So this question is the first question that every student gets. So Mike has 3 Microsoft products and Travis has 4 Microsoft products. How many Microsoft products do they have together? So I've marked the correct answer as 7. And if students get the correct answer, they are going to jump straight to question 3. Adam has 8 Microsoft devices in his house and his friend George has 3. If George goes to Adam's place and brings all of his devices, how many devices are there at Adam's house? So a slight step up, so we're looking at how students can, their literacy skills within maths, not using the numbers, actually using the words, and how well that they can do that. If we go back to this first question and a student gets it wrong, they get a question that actually gives them the numbers. Okay, they go to this question. So Stephen has 3 Microsoft products and Townsy has 4 Microsoft products. How many Microsoft products do they all have together? So here the teacher can see if the student still gets this question wrong, then there might be an issue with them understanding how to add the 2 numbers together. If they get this right, then it's more a literacy issue of being able to get the information out of the words and convert it into numbers. I hope I haven't butchered that, maths teachers. Also within forms though, you can use the maths function. So here there's some information about our Flipgrid engagement team and Jonea and Jess, and they're having a big party with their Microsoft products. And we're actually asking the students to work out what the equation and answer is. To do this, we click on the question, 3 little dots, and there is a maths option there. I can add a subtitle, so I could give an equation here, and then you could have the answers down here. So for maths teachers, there are some great ways of being able to use forms for assessment. So if we go back up to this question here, so this is the locked first question. Every student is going to get this question. You can see we've got a button here called Add Branching. If they select the answer 3, 4 or 6, they're going to go to the very next question, which is the step down, which actually gives them the numbers. If they get it right, they're going to skip question 2 and go straight to question 3. Now, my suggestion when you're branching questions is to write all of the questions that you want and do the branching at the end. And make sure that I tend to find when I'm branching, I have a piece of paper next to me and I go through and actually draw out the different patterns for the branching. But it's a great little tool, especially when you're looking at differentiation, working out where students are in their skills. Another way I've seen it used, if they get the question wrong, students are then diverted to a question that has a video showing them how they could do the question, and then goes back to the question to get them to answer it. So some great ways of teaching students whilst in a formative assessment. All right, so we're going back to the Microsoft quiz that I wrote. So that's your shuffle questions down there. Customize your thank you message. I actually teach students online normally outside of COVID, and I use this function to see how well they are following my instructions, and they'll have your responses submitted, and then I'll give them some instructions based around well-being or gratitude to do something in our Teams channel that's dedicated to that. So they might have your response was submitted. Thank you very much. Please post a picture of your workspace right now. And they'll post a picture of their computer or you know, where the view from their classroom, something along those lines. Notifications, you can send email notifications to the respondents. This is particularly good to allow students to see what they've submitted. And then you can get an email notification of each response. I wouldn't suggest this last one if you have a class of 20 to 30 students, otherwise you're going to get 20 to 30 emails and it's going to clog up your email account. All righty. Stephen, do we have any questions at the moment?
At the moment, there are no questions.
Awesome. Okay, we'll move on. So some examples of quizzes that I have seen used and that I have used myself. For summative assessment during remote learning was a big question for teachers, and a lot of teachers I spoke to were saying, but I've got a test that they would sit in 45 minutes in class. How am I going to do that when they're at home? So we explored the idea of using the timed forms. Teams integration worked really quite well, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. But we actually changed a lot of our assessments to be open book, looking at our assessments and going, there's a great the quote out there that's used by a lot of educators, what's the point of setting a question that Alexa or Google can answer? So changing our assessments to allow the kids to have all of their resources but still demonstrate their learning. Content knowledge, so pre and post quizzes on content. I have recently done a project looking at instructional words and how students respond to those. So my Year 7s, they started the beginning of the unit with a quiz, all on the different types of instructional words that we would be focusing on in that unit, defining them, working out what type of answers they would have for questions. We then looked at the unit, and at the end they did the same quiz again, and most of my students saw an increase in their results about their understanding of instructional words, which we then celebrated. Revision quizzes for students, both them completing ones staff have created, but then also an activity where getting them to actually use Microsoft Forms and create a good revision quiz for other students in the class, and then sharing those quizzes. So that's allowing them to practice their ICT skills of using forms, get some thinking about the types of questions that they could ask concerning the content and the skills that they have been learning. Connections. So having quizzes about each other. So during remote learning, I had one teacher who, for PC or form group, in the morning, they got students to create their own quiz about themselves. And each morning as a class in their team call, they would go through and they would do somebody else's form. And there was a space in there for them to put comments and messages to that other person. So it really allowed them to connect with each other. We also use the same sort of idea when looking at the values or the history of the school or of their house groups. So especially for Year 7s, they had only been at school for sort of a few weeks before we started to see students being pulled out and go to the hybrid method. So the house groups were able to engage those students about their house and teach them about their house, even though they weren't sitting in the classroom using those quizzes. And finally, professional learning. I'm an extrinsically motivated person. It gives me an opportunity to have a badge that I can tweet, and I'm so there. So using quizzes for accreditation purposes to check the learning and understanding of staff on particular topics that you've been doing in PL, and then awarding them a badge afterwards is a fun way of doing some PL. Even though we are focusing on quizzes today, I just wanted to chuck in a couple of examples of how you could use forms. So RSVP for events, wellbeing. This is one that was used both remotely and has continued face-to-face, allowing students an opportunity to contact their teacher to let them know how they're going. Using the rating question here is a good one because you can use emojis like smiley faces, and enabling students an opportunity to be able to reach out to their teacher who might not feel comfortable staying back behind class and speaking to the teacher, or in the case of remote learning, isn't able to stay back. So the wellbeing one has, I've got lots of examples of how that's been done really well. Feedback forms. Feedback from other staff, from students, on procedures, from parents. We run our students at educational risk forms through Microsoft Forms. So if a teacher of mine has identified a student they'd like some extra assistance with, we can actually fill out that SAYA form. I get a copy emailed back to me. And then if I have another teacher who comes and sees me about that same student, I can say, okay, well, this is what I've already submitted based from this teacher. Is there anything we need to add, etc. Also dealing with prac students or pre-service teachers, their feedback forms, especially when you've got a number of teachers working with them. Forms is a quick and easy way of being able to sort out their assessments and their overall feedback. And of course, data collection. So we did a massive data collection based around remote learning that is guiding our planning for next year. Data collection from students and from staff. All right, so we're going to go back to the live desktop now, and I'm going to go through how does Forms actually mark stuff for you. Do we have any questions at the moment, Stephen?
Someone's just asked, are you able to show it from the teacher's end once students have submitted?
Yes, that's what I'm doing right now.
I guessed you would be. Thanks, Kylie. Awesome.
No problems. Okay, so this is a quiz that my lovely Year 7s completed. I'm having a few issues with the media at the moment that so that hasn't shown up, but normally it would. So this was just a quick multiple choice type question. The last question here had multiple answers. Okay, so this was what was sent out to them. If we come up to the top here to responses. So once the students have completed the quiz, you'll start to get some responses. So I had 49 students complete this quiz. There was an average score of 7.6, but the quiz is still active because I didn't put an end time on it because in this particular course, the students work at their own pace. As I mentioned before, not a maths teacher, and I struggle with numbers. But I love what Forms does to data. I can understand it and I use it so much in my planning of future lessons. So for example here, question 1, what program would you use if you wanted to create a video to share with others in your class? It's worth 1 point. All 49 students understand that Flipgrid is the way that we share and create videos at my school. So I know that they're learning, they've got that down packed. And it's not something that I need to go and revise immediately. However, if I go down to question 3, which program would you use if you wanted to produce a report? This was a little bit more mixed. So 67% of the students said, yep, Word is the program that we use if we want to create a report. I did have 7 students who said they should be using Pages. At my school, we're a bring your own device, so you can bring a Mac device or a Microsoft device. So some students are still using Pages. Even though we teach them, they have to be using Word for reports. Some students here have got PowerPoint and then some with Excel. So I know that somewhere down the line, I'm going to have to go back and revise this. What is the purpose of using Word, PowerPoint and Excel? If I come down to this particular question down here, the one with multiple answers, you should submit an assignment on sector in which format. Choose all options that are acceptable. Now, hopefully they'll work out, there's 3 that I need to do because this is worth 3 points, but not always the case. Only 18% of the class got all 3 responses. So we had lots of kids that said PDF, which is great because that is correct. And then we had a few more that said Word and OneDrive link. They're all correct answers. However, I had 14 students that said a video file was acceptable, which is an incorrect answer. So I know that I need to go back and look at this knowledge. I need to go back and look at this skill because not everybody has got it completely down packed on what they need to do. So the graphs here, I love. I'm a visual person. I just find them fantastic and a great way to do some planning for the future. You can open all of your results in Excel, and that will give you an Excel spreadsheet with every single student and each response they gave to all of the questions. So for those of you who are familiar with Kahoot, it's the same sort of idea there, in the sense of you get that Excel spreadsheet. Can be a lot of data to look at. But say I want to look at one particular student. So I'm going to review answers. And this is what you get when you're looking at a student's responses. So I've got the people selected at the moment. This is a dummy student at the moment. It took them 51 seconds to complete this quiz. Again, this is a way you can say to the students, you've only got 45 minutes to complete this task, so make sure it's within that timeline. It gives you how long it has been completed. Don't be too upset if you get a quiz that takes 250 hours, because sometimes students leave the window open and it still records. It tells you with the self-marking what the score is for that student at that particular point of time. So with the self-marking, this student got 10 out of 10. Auto-graded, they got that correct. As you go through, you can see all of these questions have been auto-graded. With this last question, if the student only ticked the PDF and didn't tick Word or OneDrive link, the auto-grade would give it a mark of 0, because it's not the correct answer. It hasn't got all 3 parts. So if you are going to have questions with multiple answers, just make sure that you do review that question. If they've got 2 out of 3, I would have awarded the 2, but the auto grade will give 0. So just be aware of that. Now you can, for each question, give feedback on the question. So if they did only get 1, you could say, okay, well, these other 2 are acceptable. Make sure you read the question, because it did say choose all options that are accepted, that are acceptable. So you can do that for individual questions, or you can come up the top, click on this one up here, and give feedback overall. So it's a really good tool for students to be able to receive your feedback, especially if they're not seeing you face to face. You can also mark question by question, and I find this is really good for questions that the long text questions. Being a history teacher by trade, I tend to mark all of question 1, all of question 2, just to get that continuity. So you can choose which question you want to mark. Okay, and it'll come up with the different responses to those questions. So if I go, because these are multiple choice, you can see here it's auto-graded, 46 people selected OneDrive, 1 person selected my documents on my computer, and 1 thought that you should save your work on Office 365. Okay. All right. So once you've done all your marking, you need to post the scores. So there's a couple ways you can do this. When you're in the individual student's work, you can click on the 3 little dots, and you can click, that will actually say post response, but I've already posted these scores. So you click on that, and the student can then access the original link, and it will tell them the score that they got. Okay. You can print individual responses, and you can delete responses as well. Alrighty. The other, if I go back to post scores here, it'll actually come up with those that you have posted and those that you haven't posted yet as well. All right. How are we going with questions?
I think you're explaining everything so perfectly. There's none at the moment.
You flatter me. Okay. So Teams integration. I've been in and out of a number of presentations today, and Mark from Mark's session earlier spoke a little bit about Teams integration with forms. I've linked a video by Mike that explains exactly how to do this. It is one of his longer ones. It does go for about 8.5 minutes instead of 2 or 3, but it is a very, very good video stepping you through how you can take a form or a quiz that you have created and put it as an assignment in Teams, so the students don't have to jump between Teams and forms. They can just do everything in Teams. And the best bit is it's also linked to the Teams gradebook. So in my online, with my online class, all my formative assessments that I use are in my grades book on Teams, and all of my summative assessments are in my learning management system marks book. So I've got the two split there, and it means the kids have access to that feedback as well. So I would highly recommend watching that video. As I said, it's only 8 minutes long, but if you are using Teams, which I'm just going to say, if you can, it's amazing, please do, then this is a really good way to do some formative and summative assessment. So resources, as I said, Mike has an actual playlist that is dedicated to forms. So it will go through everything that I have done today and so much more about forms. Especially there's a whole heap of stuff there about the maths. So I have been learning a little bit more about the maths stuff thanks to Mike, but I've put a link there, and I know Stephen's putting these links in the chat for you to access. On the Microsoft Educator Centre, there is a course about creating authentic assessments using Microsoft Forms. It is an intermediate course and it's worth 500 points. For those of you who are not aware, the Microsoft Educator Centre is an amazing place for professional development. And again, me being an extrinsically motivated person, each time you complete a course, you get a badge and you can tweet it, and it's just so much fun. But they're really great PLs to teach you about the different Microsoft tools, as well as pedagogy, online pedagogy as well. So if you do that course, sign up to the MEC, search that course. If you get the badge, tweet it, tag me in there so I can give you some celebration as well. Talking about Twitter, some people to follow that can help you out with forms in particular. I will highlight John here. He is the forms man, but obviously you've got Mike, you've got Microsoft Education Australia, you've got Stephen, who's moderating here, and you've also got Microsoft Education that can help you out with the forms stuff. I woke up this morning because WA is on school holidays at the moment. It's our last sort of school working day of school holidays, and woke up this morning, was going through Twitter, having a look, and Mike posted this morning, and I tweeted him back and went, dude, I have a presentation on this and you've changed stuff and you've added stuff. Thanks for that, really appreciate it, but could you have released it yesterday? I've had a very quick look at what's up there at the moment, but it is a one-stop shop for everything Microsoft Forms. So again, the link will go up in the chat, and there's the link in the slide deck that you'll have access to as well. And it has videos on how you can create authentic assessments, how you can use forms, how to share forms in all of the different ways. And it's a really, really useful one-stop shop, if you like. So I will just go here. I do actually have it open. Okay, so you've got a whole heap of videos here to help you. You've got the forms course that I was talking about in the Microsoft Educator Centre, support page, playlist, that's Mike's playlist. You've got some of the videos here, more resources, assigning it to Microsoft Teams, the using of branching forms within sections. Now, I didn't cover sections today, but again, it's another way of branching. You also have here, and this is a really useful tool, is the user voice. So you can actually suggest things that you'd like to see in forms using that user voice. So I'd highly recommend having a look at some of the things that they are working on or that have been suggested. All right. So that all went up today. Finally, a last little thing about the Microsoft Educator Centre. You can, as I said, earn lots of badges, and this is only a few of the badges that are there, but you can gain a badge from attending today by going to the Microsoft education.microsoft.com, signing in or signing up, and you can actually select redeem code under your profile. And if you put in this particular code and select me as the presenter, you'll receive a badge about using forms for assessment, and that can be your first badge that you can tweet out and let everybody know that you've started on your journey. So that would be fantastic if you could do that, because it also helps me with earning a trainer badge. As I said, it gets addictive. So I believe I have finished with 5 minutes to spare for any question and answers. There is a feedback form. So if you want the experience, if you've never filled in a form before, there is a feedback form for you to fill in about the EduDay today, and love you to do that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I do appreciate everybody giving up their time and coming and listening to my presentation today.
Hi, Kylie. Can you use forms in OneNote?
Yes, you can use forms in OneNote. You can, sorry, I'm just going, yeah, you can use forms in OneNote. You can embed the form within OneNote. So again, like what they do with Teams, students can actually complete the form within OneNote. So it saves kids having to jump around and having different windows open. But yes, you can do that.
Fantastic.
Were there any other questions?
Just looking through here, I think they've all been answered. Just someone saying, well presented and very informative, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, appreciate that.
So I think we'll wait for 30 seconds and then close up the call.
Okay, sounds brilliant.
Okay, I've just put a link to the YouTube channel as well, where this recording will be next week. And thank you so much, everyone who attended, and thank you, Kylie, for an awesome presentation.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.